Hey everybody, it's Dean and I'm back with the awesome, the amazing Suzanne Lindbergh. Now, hi Suzanne, but before I say hi properly, Suzanne joins us from Uber. She is, and she's got an impressive role. I don't know how she does all of this, but she manages it somehow. Global head of social brand strategy, social media and content, and influencer and creator marketing. So it sounds like you work a million hours a week, Suzanne, but thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to be with you.
So just to kind of get a vibe of what that job title means, just tell us a little bit about what you do and what your kind of goals and objectives are in what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. It's a great team of people. I'm so impressed. I've been at Uber for a little over a year. I'm just so impressed by how incredibly smart everyone is, how incredibly hardworking and bright everyone is, and a group of people who really want to do really great work. So I
Mhm,
run social media at Uber. We are active on a number of channels that everybody, I'm sure, listening is very familiar with. We are active on Twitter and Instagram. We are active on Facebook in different ways. I can explain a little bit of the different areas that we activate on. And then, of course, TikTok and LinkedIn as well. And
mhm,
essentially, the role is to run the social media channels from every perspective. In addition to that, given my background of having done influencer marketing and celebrity marketing, first at Apple, where I actually created the role, and then also doing something kind of similar when I was at Verizon, it worked out beautifully when I came on board to have the influencer celebrity marketing piece come
mhm,
onto my team as well. And it makes a lot of sense because a lot of the activations that we are doing, that a lot of companies do
mhm,
with celebrity and with influencers, happen to be on social media. So there's
mhm,
just like kind of a really nice symbiosis there, if you will. Um, but the role really is to just make sure that we are having very solid, interesting, compelling conversations on social media, both with current customers as well as potential future customers of the Uber ecosystem, which of course we are transportation and delivery.
mhm.
We are firing on all cylinders at all times, but it is to run the global social handles for the company.
So just out of curiosity, that all the social platforms are kind of the same and different.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you, Uber, I would imagine big team, lots of resources to be able to pull on to put things together. But how do you specialize or kind of focus on a platform, given that you've got so many? What's some
Yeah,
of the things that you do in terms of making sure that you're not just reposting, if you know what I mean? Because I know a lot of people
absolutely.
watching this will be going through, how do we do this? And you guys have got resource. What are some of the things
Yeah.
you do?
Well, I'd like to first say that part of the beauty of social media is by its nature, it's actually intended to be pretty scrappy. And so, what my advice would be to younger startups, smaller companies who are looking at different resources and how to utilize them and how to deploy them properly across several different channels is that don't beat yourself up. As a matter of fact, celebrate having a scrappy approach. Celebrate doing your video on an iPhone and editing it yourself on Premiere. Celebrate taking photos out in the wild of your brand and your products being used by people on a daily basis and celebrate those and make those into your story. Take testimonials from people who are a part of your ecosystem. Do fun man on the street type of, I should say, man or woman on the street type of content. I mean, that's what we aim to do at Uber. We are very fortunate in that we have the resources that we need. I also am very careful not to have an excess of resources. And what I mean by that is you want everybody on your team to be working hard. You want them to be really enjoying their days and being really creative. You want them to feel like, wow, I've got a lot of work to do, but it's really fun and I'm
Mhm.
having a great time doing it. And I get to produce at high levels, but I also get to make impact every day. Um, I think that that's one of the biggest things that I would say to lean into. And it's interesting. I was reading Brand Watch. A lot of people listening, I'm sure, are familiar with Brand Watch,
Mhm.
and they put out these trend reports. And their first number one trend for 2022 was be scrappy with your content on social. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, we learned that lesson a long time ago, just because it's more relatable. That type of content is more personal. It's more relatable, it's easier to do quickly. And social media, you got to be quick, you got to be in the moment, you got to be leaning into trends, you got to be leaning into what's culturally happening in the world to be relevant.
Mhm.
You want to make sure that you're always taking an always on sort of approach, and the only way you really can do that, you cannot be sitting around waiting for very, very polished pieces of content, right? You got to go. And we do a lot of original content with our social media, and a lot of capturing stuff out in the wild, and we do it all on the iPhone. So
And when you're talking about that scrappiness, you're talking about effectively using what you have.
yeah.
And I find a lot of the time when you come up with a really good idea, if you kind of spend too much time thinking about this good idea, it
Hmm.
eventually becomes an impossible idea
Hmm. That's a
because,
very
oh, we could
astute
do
point.
this and we could do this
Yes.
and we could do, and then it becomes this mountain that's
Yes.
almost going to sap so much energy that you'll never do anything after it.
Correct. People talk themselves into having to do more, 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 more. And I'm not suggesting by any stretch that we approach anything that we're doing by saying, oh, that's good enough. That's
Mhm,
not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about you set the bar at being at the content itself being, people refer to thumb stopping, but you set the bar at, is the content compelling and interesting, and will it engage people, and will it make them feel closer and emotionally connected to your brand? And if it's
mhm,
doing that, then that content is good content for your social channels. And it is always
mhm,
very important, you asked this at the beginning of the question, very, very important to understand the nuances of each channel and make sure that you're leaning into and using those nuances, and also what each channel is particularly good at. Make sure that you're taking advantage of what that channel is particularly good at. So you don't want to just be creating the same type of content and just saying like, we'll just throw that across the channels, it'll be fine, right?
mhm,
Sometimes you do that. Sometimes you're taking a piece of content and you are using it across multiple channels, and it works well. Like a lot of companies these days make nice and easy Instagram posts by just using, there's a piece of software called Postify, that's what we use, where you take
mhm,
a tweet and you make it into a graphic for Instagram. And that's become kind of a popular, kind of easy graphic that people like, and a lot of brands use. We use it occasionally where we're taking something that as a matter of fact, we just did this on Friday. We took some tweets from customers who had particularly great experiences in their Uber recently, and we made those into like a postified graphic and
mhm,
posted that. But you want to be sure, like, make sure that if you're on TikTok, you're making TikToks, you're not making ads. You're using trending sounds, you're being great with your video, you're really using the nuances of TikTok to make TikToks. When you're on Twitter, we tend to find that text tweets by far perform the best. A lot of
mhm,
people put graphics with their tweets. A lot of people put videos with their tweets. We do that too. Sometimes that makes sense for us to do. But text tweets, that's what Twitter was built for, text. Few sentences, right? A few crisp sentences
mhm,
works best on Twitter. So make sure you're leading into that on Twitter.
mhm,
Instagram, there's kind of this little, Instagram's trying to become a big video platform. They're kind of, taking a page out of TikTok's book. And we started leaning into video on Instagram, but we make sure that we also, balance it out with some static imagery and some other stuff. But, I think that that's an important thing too, is that you want to make sure you're utilizing the nuances of each platform. And I also think it's okay for small businesses, choose a platform that works for you and just stick with that one for a while. You don't have to be on every platform. I
Mhm.
think I said a little bit earlier, we do TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We love all that. That's where we are right now. We work very hard across the board on those. And we're not adding anything new right now. There's a couple of other things bubbling up out there that we're looking at, but nothing that we're adding in the moment. We're also on YouTube. I mean,
Mhm.
YouTube, I think, is
Yeah.
actually a channel that's going to grow even more in its importance in general. I think YouTube's a wonderful, wonderful place for short films and some really emotionally connected content too.
Yeah, and I think TikTok has made that scrappiness come back.
A hundred
And
percent.
like Facebook, there's been this wave of almost professionalization of social media. And
Yes.
there's a certain standard, like you say, that things have to be presented by a brand. But actually, if you weren't a brand, if you were a small business owner, or if you were not, a big celebrity that didn't have the resources, it always felt that you were the poor cousin. But now when you see brands doing scrappy content, I saw, I don't know if you saw the Ryanair one where they just put a picture
Oh
up with the
yes.
mouth moving over the top of it.
Yes.
And it's like,
They get
it's
pretty
made it
cheeky.
easier than ever.
Ryanair gets pretty cheeky. They're having a good time over there.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? How certain brands,
Yeah.
um, have kind of adopted a personality on a platform.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
not like if you go to, Ryanair, they are a no nonsense, straight talking, it
Yes.
is what it is kind of brand, but they've taken that into a kind of comedy element
Yes.
on that platform.
Yes.
Do you
And it doesn't work
see?
for everybody. It doesn't work for every brand, right? So some brands can do that very, very well. One of my favorite ones to follow, I really enjoy them, and they can have a lot of fun with it given the products that they make. But Sour Patch Kids is one of the
Mhm,
funniest brands on Twitter, certainly. I think McDonald's does a pretty extraordinary job. They have a lot of fun too. They do a nice job. But yeah, I mean, having a voice, I feel we have a voice on social media over time. Since I've been there, we've tried to make that voice just a little bit more playful, because again, I
mhm,
keep going back to this thing of emotional connection. That's where I think that brands are changing over time, is that your brand, and I learned this really at Apple, and Apple was very ahead of its time under Steve Jobs, certainly. A lot of brands think that their brand is is their product, and it's really not. It's about values and emotions that buying from you or buying your products evokes. It's almost
mhm,
like the solutions of your products, not the products themselves. So a great example of that would be for Uber is, we delight people because we're there when they need us. If it's raining outside and they need to get to where they need to go, can go to the dentist, to the birthday party, to the fancy dinner out, or what have you. We have different products for each of those occasions. We have
mhm,
different price points for each of those occasions. We have everything from bikes and scooters all the way up to charter buses, right? And so when we talk about those different products, we talk about the solution of those products. We talk about
mhm,
the emotion of those products and the connection for the
mhm.
customer to those products. Like why do they use that particular car? Why do they use an
Yeah,
Uber X instead of an Uber XL? Or why do they get the Uber the Uber van instead? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that's where I think brands are really, and we've been doing a good job of that. Where they're really headed, it's the emotion and the emotional connection and
mhm,
the way that the products play a role in people's lives. And this was something at Apple that we learned. Steve never would talk about the tech specs of the various products.
yeah,
Certainly the tech specs, you could find them on the Apple website, and if you had questions when you went into the store, you could ask them, how fast is this chip or whatever. But all of the marketing was all about the emotion and the
Mhm.
relationship to the product. What does the iPhone give you in your life? What does the iPod give you in your life? What does just was all this emotion and feeling around being an owner of that product. We did not
Yeah.
lead with the chips, what he called them, the chip, the sort of the
Yeah.
chips and speeds and feeds. We never led with that.
Well, it
So
would be kinda like Uber now switching their social media to say, "Hey, we've got Mercedes-Benz cars,"
yeah,
or, "Hey, we've got this car or that car or the other."
right.
Nobody, don't get upset here, but nobody's buying an Uber or, booking an Uber because it's a Mercedes-Benz car. It's like, exactly as you say, I'm going somewhere, I want the convenience, I wanna relax, I don't wanna stress about it. I wanna know my big bugbear, I don't live in an Uber area, so,
Oh,
um,
okay.
I wanna
Interesting.
know I wanna know that that car is actually round the corner,
Right.
not what they tell me it's coming round the corner. We have some of the longest corners around here. It's unreal,
It's just
but
a
it's
peace of
it
mind. Like, you need to go somewhere. You want the convenience and there is a magical nature to it. I remember when I took my first Uber, I was blown away. It was in San Francisco. It was back in, I think, 2011. And San Francisco is notorious. I think it still is to this day. I live in New York now, but San Francisco is just kind of notorious for not being a cab city. New York, you can usually walk down on
mhm,
most corners and hail a cab and be on your way. But even still, then I love the convenience and the accuracy and
mhm,
knowing that the Uber is on its way to come get me. But in San Francisco, I'll never forget when someone said, "Oh, you got to use Uber. Download the app." I did it. We were coming from work to go to a dinner. So I needed to be at the dinner at a specific time, right? I didn't have time to hope that I could find a cab or what have you. And use the app, and the car pulled up, and it was like, oh my God, this is magic. This is like magic, right? And it
uh-huh,
is that magical feeling that one has about um and like you said it a little bit earlier, you sit in the car, it can relax. Okay, I know when I'm gonna be there. I can share my ride. I can let the people that I'm meeting know when to expect me. It just is that much more, via the convenience and the accuracy nature of it and the planning nature of it. It's
mhm,
a peace of mind,
mhm,
that I one little thing I don't have to worry about kind of during the day because I know it'll come to me, get me, deliver me to where I need to go.
mhm. So, let me ask you, because you're doing very much the brand, and I'm 100% with you in that, in the business sales context, we'd say you're selling the outcome or selling the
Yes.
benefits, not the feature.
Yes.
It's very similar. How would you differentiate, or just talk to me a little bit about the differences and similarities between, say, a brand like Uber and then like a personal brand? Where's the overlap and where's the big differences between an individual's brand and a company brand? And this is particularly relevant with the likes of Steve Jobs. He had his own brand, and then
Yes.
Apple as well. Just talk to me a little bit about the differences and similarities.
Well, it's so interesting because, I think Steve would tell you that he did not work at all on his personal brand. It was actually something kind of very foreign to him in a way. He never, in terms of actively working on like a personal
Mhm,
brand. But then if you kind of look, he was one of the biggest, most well known entities, individuals, and still to this day in tech, and in just business and branding and marketing and all that, just very recognizable, well known entity. So one would say it's a brand. I mean, I think that these things are becoming a little clouded, is my opinion, because I think as
mhm,
brands understand more and more that they need to not have their brand be entirely focused on what their products are and what their products do, but rather on their values and what they
Mhm.
hope to stand for. That's where I feel it starts to really mesh into personal brands, right? Because
Mhm.
I would define a personal brand as the things I care about, me, the things I
Mhm.
care about, the things that I stand for, the things that I will fight for, right? That's kind of my
Mhm.
personal brand. That's at least my definition of a personal
Mhm.
brand. It's sort of what I choose to uh, care a lot about, what I choose to talk about and share of myself. It's what I stand for, the values that I hold near and dear. And I think as corporate brands or business brands are recognizing that that's kind of being more demanded, like knowing what a brand stands for and what they care about is being demanded more and more by customers.
Mhm.
That's where these things are starting to converge a little. So the differences for me are becoming far far less sort of
Mhm.
specific, sort of far less defined. I know for us, a lot of the actions that we take as a company right now, well, actually, all year, we've been doing a lot of really important work around Ukraine and keeping Ukraine
Mhm.
moving and helping as much as we can. Uh, People in Ukraine to get the goods and services that they need and get them moved around to the places they need to go, even despite what's going on in the in their
Mhm.
country. It's been very important for us to partner with different entities, and we have this tagline, "Keep Ukraine Moving." Really, really important to us. That's something that's important that we stand for. We do a lot of social impact work at Uber. It's really, really important work, making sure that we're helping various communities. It even extends into things like the work that we did around getting people rides to get their COVID vaccines, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It extends to something that we're doing right now in collaboration with the White House to get people delivered medications that they need if they have COVID. So those are things that we stand for. Those are important things. That's important to our brand. Like we care deeply
Mhm.
about our customers. We care deeply about what's going on in the world. We care deeply about keeping people moving and getting to the places they need to be and getting access to the things they need to get access to. And so I really do see that there's sort of this blending of at least my definition of a personal brand and
Mhm.
what we see certainly at Uber as a corporate brand, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, one of the things that I always say to people, it's kind of interesting. One of the areas that people sort of talk a little bit about is, you know, how to talk to customers. And I always say to people, well, you're one of our customers, aren't you? People who work here, we're all customers of Uber. What do we
Mhm.
like? What do we care about? Like,
Mhm.
don't forget that. Don't forget that we all here are customers of our company. Yes, we work here, but we also view the world from a customer POV and a customer perspective. And we have a
Mhm.
lot of opinions as customers of the brand that we happen to work for about things that would make using the brand, using products a little bit easier. So let's not forget that, right?
Mhm.
So I just people forget that they're customers sometimes when they work for a big company. They're like, "Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm a customer of this brand. I forgot about that for a minute."
And I guess it's really easy, or it's I see this a lot with lots of businesses, but the inverse can be true too, is that a lot of kind of the brands that existed 20 years ago, if you look at what happened to them, is they basically stopped talking to their customers.
Mm,
If you look at, the famous one, Blockbuster. Yeah, they had the option to buy Netflix and decided
yep,
this will never take on. They didn't really
yep.
look at the market and go, "What's the market telling us?" They were just listening to themselves. And I guess what you're saying there is we all exist by the grace of our customers, and
Mhm.
if we forget what they think and what matters to
Right.
them, we die.
Yes, that's exactly there. There are a lot of blockbusters. A great example of that. There are those handfuls of famed stories about just ignoring, right, where what customers are telling you is important to them, or where they're, where customers are headed. And I don't know if it's. I obviously I don't think that it's out of any kind of odd it maybe arrogance. Maybe there's some arrogance in some of those companies
Mhm,
that disables them from seeing the bigger picture. Maybe it's fear. If we make, it's
mhm,
hard to make big changes. It's really hard to make big changes,
mhm.
right? And so you get very fearful of, what resources are we going to need to make big changes? What's this going to cost us? What if we fail? What if we make this big change? What if we make this big bet and we fail miserably? There's so much fear wrapped up in those kinds of big decisions.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's what they just kind of hope, like the famed ostrich in the head in
Yeah.
the sand. That's really a mechanism that the ostrich uses, is that if I don't see the scary thing, then it doesn't exist. So maybe if they, companies think if they just ignore the scary thing, it'll go away.
Mhm.
It is funny, but some of those instances too, like it's I've been around long enough that Blockbuster was a big part of my life early on. And I remember the ritual of going to the video store and picking out the
Mhm.
videos that you wanted. And it was really fun to go do that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if at the time anyone could ever imagine that we would just be streaming all this stuff on the TVs that are sitting in our living room right now, right?
Mhm.
I thought it was so amusing that I found out recently that, do you know that Netflix still does have a series of DVDs that they do send out to people?
They
That's
still
still part
have
of their
it?
business. They still have it. I read the number. It's like just a couple of thousand. It's not a lot. It's like a small warehouse or what have you. But they still have that for certain parts of the
Wow.
world. So, or parts of, I don't know if it's just the United States, but yeah, isn't that kind of interesting? I mean, we can't forget
Wow.
too, like, let's not forget there are a lot of people in this country that still don't have broadband, right? So
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
conveniences, the fact that I'm talking to you here on a podcast and you and I are doing a video podcast to each other, is just many people just couldn't even make that leap because they're still having a struggle, dialing up to send emails. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just kind of interesting why those decisions get made.
Mhm. So pivoting a little bit from personal brand, you part of what you do is also talk and work on the kind of influencer, celebrity,
Mhm.
and, creator, worlds. How have you seen that change over the last couple of years? And there's been a lot of kind of, how do you know who really is an influencer and who isn't
Right.
because of the vanity metrics and stuff. Tell me a bit about what you've seen in the world of the creator economy.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and I separate creators from influencers and even celebrity.
Mhm,
One tends to use influencers and celebrity when you have a defined message and you want them to take your defined message, maybe even your defined content, and you just want them to push it into the world for you, and you're
mhm.
taking advantage of their reach and their credibility with their audiences. So that's important
Yeah.
as well. You're taking advantage of the fact that they have a lot of credibility with their own audiences and fans, maybe even more credibility than you have in the moment, or more like maybe more authenticity than you have in the moment. So you use them to help push a pretty defined piece of content or a scripted piece of material that you want them to get out to the world from a simple reach perspective, and that can be very valuable. We do some of that work, and we just make sure that we are using our the authentic nature of who best to work with on that, and who will have the most resonance on that. And then creators, and I think more creators, of you give them a pretty vague concept and you ask them to really imprint it with their own style, their own creativity,
Mhm,
their own sort of purview or POV on the world. And
Mhm.
presumably, you've done a really, really good job of choosing the right creators up front so that when they deliver the content to you, it's not super off base and therefore unusable. But we
Mhm.
do a lot of our creator work mostly on TikTok, and there's a handful of creators that we work with, helping them to understand some of the things that are important to us right now. But then we really want them to run with it and make sure
Yeah.
that their personality is imbued throughout, that it's really of their POV. That's really, really
Mhm.
important. And then we will post that content to our TikTok. We'll do that a little bit on Instagram as well. But that's a nuance. Like that difference is kind of a nuance.
Mhm.
The influencer area, I think you're right. Everybody, it feels like everybody's an influencer now, right? And so I think it's really important for brands to make sure that they are thinking really, really hard about the types of influencers that really are authentic to their brand, right? And that
Mhm.
I think have certainly reach, but certainly can deliver maybe an audience of people that is really important and critical to moving things forward.
Mhm.
Celebrity, I find that then you've got this whole bucket of celebrity, and they're really really fun to work with. They have huge, 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 huge reach, right? And we across the company work with
Mhm.
them in many different ways. Obviously, you'll see Uber advertising that has celebrities in the advertising in some
Mhm.
instances. And then there will be social aspects to the stuff that we do with them as well. We'll post those ads across our social to make sure they get nice social reach as well. But I kind of look at it as three separate buckets. And I think that the important one for the TikTok is kind of really engage this world of creators and the creator
Mhm.
grouping that uh, is just much more, I think, of a collaboration on the content creation. Whereas I look at the influencers as more of a reach equation.
So I'm going to tread into some sticky waters, and feel free to skip past this, but how does it feel to have a YouTube genre about Uber passengers? Now, feel free to decline this answer because we didn't talk about this, but I subscribe to a channel, right? And it's called Entitled Uber Passengers, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that. I that's new.
I thought you
I haven't seen that. Well, one thing that here's what I will say. I'm not going to talk specifically to that channel. One thing that I will say is that we are hugely focused on making sure that everybody has exactly the type of ride that we all want to have, like
Mhm.
pleasant, gets you from point A to point B. Safety is a very big deal for Uber. Convenience, comfort, all of those things are very, very important to us. And we do spend a lot of time. We have a very significant customer care service and support team that does pay attention to making sure that everybody has a positive experience in an Uber, and they really do
Mhm.
everything that they can to make sure that that's the case. That's about what I will have to say about that's
Yeah.
important, and that's
I
part of our
I didn't
value set.
expect
It's
you
a
to go
big
much
part of
into
our
that, to be honest.
values. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
huge part of our value set of what
But
we
it
really
is
care about.
it is I mean, coming full circle, and I know that's kind of a tricky topic because you've got drivers and passengers and all sorts of stuff, but
Right.
it is it is quite interesting what content is interesting.
Sure.
Like, I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. My 16-year-old, watches people playing video games.
I'm very familiar with this genre.
And it's like,
Teenagers
I
love
don't
to do
quite
that.
understand.
That's why PewDiePie has got a huge that's how PewDiePie started out, is I think the biggest on YouTube of people watching him play video games. It is an interesting genre. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I look at that and go, why would
I know.
I watch that?"
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think this is where understanding your own audience
Yes.
becomes really important, because
Yes.
that's where you start to realize, actually, they're interested in a whole other thing, and it's about where the customers are, It's about where your audience is, the people who you serve are, not necessarily where you think. And that's where I think I know a lot of small businesses struggle with this is what's in our audience's interest? What are they interested in rather
Yes,
than, as we talked about earlier, I think before we recorded, TikTok's not just slapping ads onto TikTok. That's not
correct.
what it's about.
Correct.
And you can do, in fact, I always talk to people about how can you tell people about what you do without telling people what you do? And that's really the content and how you play it out, isn't it? Have you got any
Absolutely.
examples you can share of how you do that? Telling people about Uber without telling people about Uber. I think that's a TikTok thing, by the way.
Yeah, it is a TikTok thing. Well, that's kind of what we do is we find great trending sounds on TikTok and we create an Uber lifestyle there. That's kind of I think really how you do it. There are all these relatable moments that people have who are our customers, right? And we're always trying to look for those very relatable moments and lean into them, certainly on TikTok, and lean into them with a trend wherever possible. Little things like, when we did a TikTok a while back of finding a water in the like the some of the drivers who put little distinct water bottles in the back of a
Mm,
car, and that's all about just making sure their customers are comfortable and their customers are well taken care of. And so we did a little TikTok about that, just like the finding the water in the back of the car. That's very exciting, right? Little things like that, and then
mm,
that we don't have to say like we don't have to say, oh, some drivers may put water in the back of the car for your convenience. No, that's inherent in that moment of exciting. We found water in the back of the car, right?
mm,
It's that comfort that's conveying that comfort and convenience and being taken care of and having, on your way to wherever you're going, having a good experience, a magical experience. And
mm,
that's what we did to convey that, certainly. And we do use the platform. There are other little things, that just funny things that people do in and around, like when people are obsessed with looking at the app itself, watching their driver make their way to them, right? And so we did a little
yeah.
funny TikTok around that was humorous and used a trending sound. But also what we're relaying there is like every aspect of this experience is well laid out. When your
Mhm,
car is coming, that's magical unto itself, but it also is a peace of mind and it's
mhm,
convenience, and it's you being able to be planful around, okay, it's 2 minutes away, I'm watching it come, okay, great. Just those little things that just, we don't have to kind of beat people over the head, if you will, of the different features and benefits of the app. We just show how the app comes to life
mhm.
in their everyday usage of the product and in their everyday lives, right? And so
It's
that's what we've
kinda like
leaned very heavily into on TikTok.
I bought I bought this T-shirt from a shop in London, and, it wasn't a cheap T-shirt, but they took it, they folded it up really nice,
Yeah.
and they wrapped it in
Yep.
front of me and put the stickers on and everything, and it was just that moment of feeling really special was just
Yes.
like, "This is really nice."
Yes. Instead of them just kind of grabbing it,
And you
throwing it
can
in a
never
bag and
forget
handing
those
it to you.
things, those little
Yeah. No, it is
and I guess
those little touches are amazing. Yeah.
and that's really what people remember, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not the color of the car, it's, maybe if they ask for a conversation in the car, it's the conversation they had with somebody, but even just that little thing about conversation, like, it's just there's just little touches about I don't know how I don't live in an Uber area, but outside of when I'm not here, I'm in an Uber.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have this very popular series that we do on our social called 5 Star Stories. And what we do is we are just looking for those magical moments that people share about being in an Uber. And they'll either tweet about them or post them to their social media. That's how we find them. And we ask them if we can use their tweet or their post. We get in touch with them. Can we please use this? They always say yes. And then we
Mhm,
post that. And we posted a picture recently of just like during during the holidays, the one Uber driver had a bunch of candy in the back of the car, and the person was talking about like, oh, this was so nice. I got into this car and it was so festive and it was decorated, and there's a pride of there's a really true pride of the uh, drivers and the couriers of doing a good job and wanting to create that magical experience along with Uber. And little things like that really go a long way, and people talk about them. They talk about those moments and they share them on their social, and then we in turn can share them as well. And it's what the one series that we do
Mm.
that always does incredibly well in terms of engagement. People just love seeing those stories. It's nice. And we
Mm.
do them from around the world as well, so it's nice.
Oh, that's awesome. So thinking we're going into 2023,
Mhm.
2022 went really fast.
Yes, it did.
Um, what are you seeing on the horizon, social media wise, for 2023 that people could pick your brains on today?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, video obviously is here to stay, right? So
Yeah.
people have been playing around with video and toying with video in 2022, and some brands have done more of that than others. But video is definitely here to stay, short form video for sure. And I think that that is definitely something that, will continue to do, other brands will continue to do. In terms of social media channels, I don't see huge dramatic changes right now. It'll be interesting to see where Twitter heads. There's been a lot of changes
Mhm.
there. I don't want to get too much into commenting on that, but let's see where that heads in 2023. But we always have our eyes and ears open. I'm curious where Be Real heads. You're familiar with Be
Yeah.
Real? That's
Yeah.
really interesting. It's very authentic to its core. I don't know how brands play there yet. I know some are dipping their
Mhm.
toes into the water and trying some things out, but I never would want us to get into a channel that I didn't feel we could authentically play in. So I think another area, as I said, YouTube. I feel like there's going to be a little YouTube resurgence. I think that YouTube it's always been very popular, but I also think that there's going to, because of the focus on video on TikTok and now Instagram Reels. I feel like YouTube is going to have a little bit of a more how do I want to say research? I don't know, the resurgence is not the right word because it didn't go anywhere, but just maybe
Mhm.
more of a celebratory, like, hey, let's do this on YouTube too, or let's lead on YouTube. I just think that that acceptance and embrace of video will help YouTube to shine really bright as well. But what I did read an interesting article too. I wonder, a very fascinating article that said a lot of the streaming services are not ordering as many new shows as they had been
Wow.
in for 2023. And so I think a lot of those writers and creators and directors and actors and talent are not going to have as much of an outlet on streaming services because those streaming services are having to, I think, cut costs a little bit. Netflix saw its first downtick in subscribers this past year. So I do wonder, what are they going to do in the meantime? I think that they're
Mhm.
going to have to take things to places like YouTube and see, because they're not going to stop creating. Creative people don't stop creating. If there's less of an outlet that is scurrying toward paying them and getting them up onto streaming, then maybe something like a YouTube will take advantage and lean into that even more. I literally just read that article yesterday, I think. So kind of
That
interesting
that could be
where it's headed.
really
Yeah.
interesting in
Yeah.
both ways, couldn't it? I mean, if you had, if the budget wasn't there, you could have almost well-known or well-respected people in the TV movie world actually bringing more access content to YouTube.
Yeah.
And equally, you could have some of the streaming platforms just going, "Oh, they've got an awesome channel. Let's turn it into a show."
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's going to be some looking into efficiencies, and it's certainly about. I think it's about quantity. Certainly, there was the sort of feeling in the streaming world of the last couple of years that the customers always, and it is kind of true. Customers always, they want something new to watch. They need something new. They need to start a new show, like that lingo of like, I need a new show. That whole thing is like
Yeah.
needing to start a new show. They're just finding that they can't have as much, they just don't have the budget right now, I think, to put as much of that into play and try things out as much as they had in the previous past couple of years. They're going to have to just, I think, take 2023 to take a look at, what they're producing, where are they going. But I think
Mm.
YouTube could benefit from that. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm going to be
I think
keeping my eyes
I
and
think the
ears paying
big
attention to
problem
that.
with the big problem with the streaming services is we watched everything in 2020, 2021. There's nothing left to watch.
Well, you're right, with people being at home, that is really true. And I also do wonder if some of this too is not an anticipation of people now getting out of their houses a little bit, getting
Mhm,
out of wanting to go and do things. It's interesting. I've most recently started going to movie theaters again, right? And people
mhm.
are starting to go to movie theaters again. And you got to imagine that the big studios are happy about that. That stuff is getting big releases in movie
Mhm.
theaters this holiday season. Some big films. I think the big film that really proved that out was Top Gun Maverick. And that's a film that
Yeah.
was shot and was ready to go. And then pandemic hit and they held it. They said, this movie
Mhm.
needs to be released in a theater. We're holding on to it. We're not releasing it on just streaming services. And they look at the box office on that. People came out to see that and some of these bigger films as well. So, like there shifting balances in the business, right? Is I think where I think what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I look
I'm
at where
all
my
set to
kids
watch
are,
Avatar.
like TikTok is it. This is where Avatar is a big one coming. My kids are on TikTok. That's what they're on, TikTok and Instagram. That's what they care about. That's what they're on. That's what their friends are on. They love getting sucked into, as they call, like I got sucked into a rabbit hole of like, which is kind of what used to happen on YouTube. I think still happens on YouTube for sure.
Yeah.
But like they use those words and references now for TikTok and Instagram reels. And so it's just kind of interesting. Yeah.
And when you think about it, actually, platforms like TikTok, even YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, they're very much like mini TV
Yes.
series.
Yes.
That's what they are really. They're
Yes.
3 minute, 1 minute, 56 seconds TV series.
That's exactly right.
And,
Yeah. And I think the people who create actual series do themselves well instead of just posting. Like that's another thing that we found is there's a familiarity that people like about series. They like to see something, engage with it, and then they like to see like sort of a different, they like to kind of see it again with the new episode. And so there are certain series that we've done on our TikTok, certain series that we've done across our social, that familiarity breeds a warmth and an emotional connection, and people really like that instead of just this hodgepodge of just throwing a bunch of different content against a wall. And so we have our series that we lean into. Some of them are weekly, some of them are just twice a month, and then we also lean into trends and culture and what's happening in the moment as well. So it's that nice balance of those
mhm.
things that I think plays out very nicely.
And one final question, um, and I don't know how you will answer this one, but we can have a go. Given that trends can happen so quickly,
Yes.
how do you plan for that?
So you can't plan for a trend. Very often, in the trends I'm talking about, you wake up that morning and we see that something is really starting to hit. And so the way that we build out our calendars is it's kind of twofold. We are as planful as we possibly can be. And there are some very planned things, right? We know that this particular product might launch on this one day. So we put that on the calendar. We know that this one ad campaign may launch on this other day. So that's on the calendar. So we build out as much as possible as we can into our social calendars along those lines. Okay. Then,
Mhm,
about usually the last week of the month, so we're doing it this Friday, actually. This Friday, the team will get together for about an hour and a half and we will pour through the January and a little bit of the February calendars. And we will lay out our calendars as best as we can for the next month. And we'll look at things like culture calendars. We'll look at, oh, are there interesting movies that are going to release or TV shows that are releasing? Are there interesting cultural moments that are taking place in the month of January that we want to make sure there might be like an Uber way into that cultural moment? And so we'll plot that out as much as we possibly can so that we go into the month with a fairly robust calendar, because then we want to start working on some graphics and some videos and some copy and that kind of thing. But then if we get up one morning, we have a production meeting every single day. If we get up one morning and there is something starting to trend, we will scrap certain plans, and very quickly, my graphics guy, my video guy, my editor, and my copy, we will all very quickly, usually talking about it in the production meeting, but then we might take it to Slack or something like that. We will figure out how we're going to lean into that trend and get it posted so that we're in the moment and we're into that trend. So it's kind of like it's just like it's sort of like plan, then what, we got to jump into this, right? So it's just not everybody can kind of wrap their brains around having to kind of have that very kind of two sides perspective of the
Mhm.
world, but you have to in social, you just have to. And so that's enabled us to be on top of some trends that we see bubbling up. We use different tools to identify trends. We also rely heavily on our community management folks to see what things are bubbling up. They might reach out to me and say, hey, we're starting to notice that there's this trend happening on Twitter right now. We think there's a way in for us. We're going to come back to you in about 5 minutes with an idea. And it's like, okay, great. So you need people, you need to hire well, you need to have people on your team who can think fast, work fast, who are paying attention to culture, paying attention to different trends, and can feed that into our meetings together and our communications channels every single day. And yeah, it's this combination of being very planful, but also being able to be very in the moment.
And how much how much? Because if you're a small business owner listening to us talk about this, you go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," but Suzanne's Uber.
Right.
But this is all maybe not as intense as what you're doing, but if your audience is 200 people or 2,000 people, the principles of what you talking about, influencing people, stories, getting across your band, they apply whether you're a
Correct.
$2
They do.
billion company or
Absolutely.
a it's just about scale, isn't it? It's just about doing what
Absolutely.
you can
These things
manage.
all apply. And what I would say, one of the most important things that a small company can do if they want to start really playing on social is hire a community manager whose entire job is to be in the feeds all day, every day, and using these types of tools to see what are people saying about your products and your brand, right? And then engage with those people and start to have a conversation with them, and also to see what's happening culturally and what's happening in trends and what other brands are doing. If you hire one community manager and you hire one social producer, and you'll find that most social producers these days can write a little bit of copy, can use products like Canva, which makes creating graphics very, very easy, and they can shoot on an iPhone and edit a little bit. Some of that content, some of that video content, most social producers can do all that stuff to a certain degree. That person, in combination with a community manager, that team can get you started out really, really nicely, and start getting you on the path to having really good social. But that community manager, so important, because that's the person who's going to tell you, here's what people are saying about our products. Here's what people are saying about our brand. Here's kind of how people are feeling about this thing that's happening in our industry, that we should probably be paying attention to. Here's what people are saying about our competition, right? Here's what people are saying, just on social in general, on different things that are happening in the world. That is such an informed entity for your products and
Mm,
your brand. I think it's just an essential person to have.
yeah. No, that's awesome advice. Suzanne, you've been an absolute star. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much for
you.
coming
That
on.
was fun. Really enjoyable.
Loads of good advice there, loads of good tips.
Thank you.
I think the video piece and that Scrappy bit will give hope to many small businesses knowing
Yes.
actually it's just about being us and doing the best with what we can. You know, we
Yes.
don't need to be Hollywood. So thank you so, so much.
No, thank you for taking the
If
time to spend with me.
if you've enjoyed this, you wanna pick Suzanne's brains or find out more about what she's up to, you can find her on LinkedIn and wherever you're listening or watching to this, her link to her profile will be there, and you can go ask her questions and see what she's posting about and see what they're sharing at Uber. Suzanne, thank you so much for coming on. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.